Good afternoon and welcome to the Lotsa Helping Hands Caregiving Inspiration Series. Today, November 1st, which actually marks the first day of National Family Caregivers Month. So welcome to all of you who are participating with us on this special kickoff to the month and to our Caregiving Inspiration Series. With me today is Sherri Snelling, who is the CEO and co-founder, CEO and founder of the Caregiving Club, and she is a nationally recognized expert on caregiving, and with special emphasis on self-care and really helping caregivers find the resources that they need. And we're so delighted to have Sherri with us once again as one of our speakers in our Caregiving Inspiration series. So welcome, Sherri.
Thank you, Brooks.
Before we get started, both Sherri and I, and really the whole team at Lots Helping Hands, as well as the Caregiving Club, just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge the suffering that's going on along the East Coast in response to Hurricane Sandy, recognizing we've heard actually from many people on our Facebook page and on Twitter, many who wanted to be with us this afternoon, and obviously circumstances are such that they're not able to. And we will be recording this webinar and we'll be sharing it back out with all of those who registered previously. But most importantly, we just wanted, for those who are listening or those who have loved ones that were really affected by the storm, that we're thinking of them and sending our best wishes to all of you and your friends and loved ones. With that, we wanted to begin by walking you through a little bit of information about Lotsa Helping Hands, recognizing that many of you who are with us today are here to learn more about the service as well as additional resources that can support a caregiver in their journey. And so what we'd like to do is just provide some background information about this service so that you have it at your fingertips at whatever time you might need it for yourself or for a loved one. And then I'll pass it over to Sherri, and she's going to walk you through a wonderful list of resources and tools that you can be using to help in your caregiving journey. So it always is good to begin with our vision at Lotsa Helping Hands, and it really is a world where everyone can give and receive help through the power of community. And even with the most recent events with the storm, we are very much aware and often reminded that through community we can get through even the most challenging of times. And it really is our vision here at Lotsa to bring people together through the power of their community. And as it relates to caregivers, we focus on one key word, and that word is help. We know that caregivers are juggling many different things in their life. We know that caregiving often comes without warning, and we know that resources and information is very important to caregivers. But we also know that the day-to-day life of a caregiver dictates that they do need some extra help. They need some helping hands to get through those challenges. And that's what Lots of Helping Hands is all about. What we do is we bring together caregivers and volunteers by powering online communities that really aim to help restore that health and balance to a caregiver's life. We know that caregivers are juggling during times of medical crisis. They're often exhausted and are managing multiple responsibilities. And we know that often they receive many well wishes from friends and family, and a very large number of offers of help. Back to that key word, we know that when somebody has a cancer diagnosis or someone is seeing a friend or neighbor caring for mom or dad with an Alzheimer's diagnosis, we often say to that person, "What can I do to help you?" And the caregiver is very overwhelmed in answering that question. So what we do at Lots of Helping Hands is we tap into the caregiver's circles of community, their family, their friends, their neighbors, people from their religious organization, colleagues at work. We bring them together through private online communities that organize that help during times of medical crisis or caregiver exhaustion, or really any major life event that may be going on with the family. And that is really what our free service is all about. This month, we're delighted to be launching a campaign actually that just launched today called the Year of Helping Hands. And it is all in the theme of helping and encouraging everyone in our nation, in fact, to make a promise to help a caregiver today. And there are lots of ways that you can help a caregiver, and Lotsa Helping Hands is just one of those ways. Here's an example of the many stories we often receive from community members. We have more than 1.3 million people who've participated in our free service. And this is just one story of a woman named Susan who was a successful vice president at a Fortune 500 company, swiftly thrown into a caregiving role when her mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Her mom moved in about a year later, and then 3 months after that, her husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she was very overwhelmed, yet grateful for the offers of help she would so often receive from her circle of community. So she herself, a caregiver, actually first created her own community at Lotsa called Susan's Helping Hands. Later on, she asked some of her closer friends to serve as the administrators of the community, and they're still at it today, bringing Susan and her family meals, helping with rides to medical appointments, and just offering a visit for Susan so that she can get some respite. And this is just one example, and if you check out our story project, you can certainly see there are many, many stories that our members have been gracious enough to share with us and to our larger, with our larger community. This is an example of a fictitious version of Susan's Helping Hands. Certainly all of our communities are private. You cannot see into any community. If you go there, you wouldn't be able to see unless you requested membership and you were approved. All of the communities require a specific process to be part of. But just for the purpose of the webinar, this is a community homepage called Susan's Helping Hands. And you can see along the top, there's a lot of different information about me, the person signed in, people or other folks in the community, links to the help calendar where you can organize help, and a variety of other things, which I'll briefly show you now. It's very simple to add and invite members to join your community. There's no limit. Some of our communities have 1,000 people, others have 25. It really depends on the situation and what the particular need is for the family. But you can simply add a first name and last name and email address and invite as many members as you wish. You and others in your community can serve as community leaders, which allow you to administer much of the activity inside the community. And you definitely don't need to be a member of the family to be the administrator. Oftentimes it's a friend or a neighbor or a colleague of that caregiver who is eager to help. Once you've invited people into the community, you can easily post needs that might be required for the family. So it could be meals on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, rides to medical appointments on Tuesdays, as an example. These activities are simple to create. We have examples and demos on our website at lotsahelpinghands.com. You can create your activity, and our system sends reminders to the family as well as to the volunteer so that everybody knows who signed up for what, and everyone remembers the commitments that they made to the family. In addition to the help calendar, we also have several community building features that really bring about that social engagement and emotional support for the family. It's wonderful for the family to be able to share photos, updates with everyone in the community. So if mom has a great doctor's appointment, that caregiver doesn't need to necessarily call 30 people, but can post an update announcement on the website, and with a click of a button, everyone can be made aware of mom's great progress. There's also opportunities for personal blogging and updating resources and many, many custom features that can be created for the community. These communities are yours. We provide the service and we provide the support, but you all have the opportunity to make them your own. There are message boards for sharing information in the community, well wishes for posting good thoughts and well wishes to the family that are always wonderful to support at that emotional level for the family. And then finally, a vital information section, which encourages people, most often it's the immediate family, but it's the place where you can store important documents, health information, information about physicians, hospitals, care facilities, financial and legal information. And you can make this information available to everyone in the community or to select members like your immediate family if that's what works best for you. And there are a lot of nuances like that within the system, which we aren't going to have time to go through in detail today. but we do want everyone to just have a brief overview of what Lots of Helping Hands is all about and encourage you to go and check it out and create a community if it suits your need or the need of someone that you love. We welcome you to do that and certainly share questions with us. So in closing, again, we just wanted to highlight and mark the fact that it is the kickoff today, November 1, to National Family Caregivers Month. And so if you are new to the Lots of Helping Hands family, even if you aren't yet ready to create a community or maybe you don't need one at this time, check out our promise page at lotsofhelpinghands.com/ipromise, and it will provide you with a place to make a promise to help a caregiver sometime in 2013, as well as provide some ideas on ways that you can support a caregiver. And we thought it was really important to kick this off during the month of November, National Family Caregivers Month, but the campaign will be running all year long through 2013. So we'll look forward to sharing more information with you as it grows, as our members grow as well. Now I'd like to go ahead and introduce once again Sherri Snelling, who is CEO and founder of the Caregiving Club. And Sherri is such a wonderful, we feel so fortunate to have her with us. She's presented for our Inspiration series before and really brings such an expertise and a very broad and deep understanding of the resources that are out there for caregivers. And so what we thought would be really compelling to do as a way to kick off National Family Caregivers Month is actually invite Sherri to participate. She has a new book coming out called A Cast of Caregivers, and what she's going to be doing is sharing tips and resources and her sources of the best information that's out there for caregivers. And we just thought the timing was really great. And so Sherri, thank you on behalf of all of us, and we'll turn it over to you to walk the group through the resources today.
Great. Well, thank you, Brooks, and thank you, everybody who's joined us today. I want to echo Brooks' thoughts at the beginning about our friends on the East Coast who are still coming through the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, and our thoughts and prayers are with you. But as Brooks said, you know, this is the kickoff to National Family Caregiver Month, and when we talked about what kind of information are the Lotsa community folks looking for, we thought, you know, let's do a resources listing and walk folks through some ideas and also some of the great organizations that are out there to help. So as Brooks said, you know, my book is coming out, and it is called A Cast of Caregivers. And the reason why I chose the title is because as I started to write about the 65 million Americans out there who are caring for a loved one, a number which is, of course, only going to grow over the next 20 years with our aging baby boomer segment of society, I really thought, you know, we are a cast of caregivers. I mean, this is a role that most of us, if not all of us, are going to play in our lifetime. And the thing that really hit me as I was writing the book, and I've been doing a lot of writing about caregiving over the last few years, is that, you know, it is a global phenomenon right now, this aging of society. And there are a lot of wonderful national resources, and a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today are national organizations, but really the caregiving movement, if you will, that we're facing right now, or the caregiving crisis in this country, is really about almost similar to the environmental thought, which is think global but act local. So many of the resources and the services that you're going to really find are helpful to you, you're going to find right in your local community, and I'll walk you through you know, what those are and how to find those. But what we thought we'd do is we wanted to focus this because obviously the world of caregiving is so extraordinary large. It's really unique to everyone's situation. You know, somebody who's caring for a parent with Alzheimer's has a very different experience than a caregiver of a special needs child with autism. So the spectrum of caregiving is huge and very comprehensive, but there are three areas that we thought would really address some key challenges, and really some of the biggest challenges that caregivers face. And those are, you know, the whole dilemma around senior driving and what happens when you have to have that really tough conversation with a parent about giving up the keys. In-home care, which of course is a big issue, and how do you get the right resources? And then what are the alternatives for senior housing? You know, if you can't have your loved one stay in their home any longer or live with you, what are the choices out there and how do you make the best choice? So those are what we were going to talk about today. So from the first one, senior driving, you know, I like to talk about this. There's our Route 66 image there, but I like to talk about this. This is really a two-lane highway. So often when we get involved in a situation where we realize that maybe a parent shouldn't be driving anymore, it's just something we want to avoid. It's that conversation we just do not want to have. And as I've been out there talking to caregivers across the country, this is coming up now as one of the number one things that I get asked. How do I have this conversation? So what I like to tell folks is that it is a two-lane highway, and you have to think of yourself as you're the co-pilot with your loved one in this dilemma, and it's something that you both need to solve together. And I'm going to take you through the 3 steps of that. But we know that cars are basically, you know, they're our symbol of independence. Giving up those keys is really giving up so much more than just the ability to get around. It's giving up freedom. It's giving up our sense of, you know, ourselves. And, you know, I've told caregivers, you know, think back to when you were begging your dad at age 16 to give you the car keys because you now have your license. You know, now you might be begging dad to give up the keys to you for a different reason. So one of some statistics, I'm sorry, that are crucial to know is that, first of all, 10% of all drivers on the road today are over the age of 70. We do know that seniors have more fatal accidents of any age segment except for teenagers. We also know that 40% of older drivers have macular degeneration. So this is creating a lot of vision impairment and obviously then impairs our driving. And from a perspective of when do we have this conversation or when do we start looking for these signs, we do know from the Auto Club that seniors over the age of 70, for men, they're outliving their driving ability by 6 years, and for women, it's 11 years. So that's how long they're driving past the point when they really probably shouldn't be driving anymore. And I will tell you, I'm going to talk about this from a personal experience as well, because my stepdad is 81 years old. He loves his car. And he has had a couple of, not accidents in terms of auto accidents, but he scraped the side of his car pulling into the garage. And my mom was telling me about it, and my red flag went up, and I thought, oh no, I'm now in this position. I'm going to have this conversation. And so I've started having the conversation with my mom. And the reason why is because most older parents want to hear about driving issues from a spouse or their doctor. So I'm going to work with my mom to be a partner on this and watch for some signs. And one of the things that I'm going to talk to you next about is, you know, we want to make sure that their driving is safe right now. Then we want, if we can't get them to, if this driving isn't safe and we've done the assessments, then we have to talk about the driving retirement. And you also then have to have your list ready for alternative transportation. So going to the next slide, which is really about the driving assessment, there are some really wonderful resources out there. You know, first of all, the things that you should be looking for are not isolated incidences. So while my stepdad scraped the side of his car getting into the garage, I've marked that down. That's number one. I'm going to give him the 3-strike rule, and then we're going to have a conversation. But you know, what you need to look out for are more than one incident. You know, if they've become fearful or nervous or anxious about driving, if they have dents and scrapes in their car on numerous occasions, if they have difficulty staying in their lanes, or they're not following the road signs, and particularly if they have a slower response time to braking or accelerating. These are all of the key causes for senior driving accidents today. But there's a couple things you can do. First of all, you don't have to immediately ask for the keys. Something that has come up recently is really doing an assessment on how well you fit in your car. And there's something called Car Fit. which is a program that was created by AARP and the American Society on Aging and the American Occupational Therapy Association. And what they created is a 15-minute, it's a 12-point checklist. And it's created by volunteers. You can usually find these car fit events at senior centers. So the National Council on Aging has a list of senior centers across the country, or you can go, we have the CarFit website listed where you can go and find out when events are happening in your city. But I'm going to take my stepdad to a CarFit in a couple of weeks that's happening out here in Southern California. And he's agreed to it. And the reason why is because sometimes the steering wheel's not at the right place. Maybe you need to adjust the seat a little bit. One of the biggest issues, if you can believe it, with senior accidents is the mirrors are not adjusted correctly in the car. So all of these little tweaks can be the first step in helping your loved ones stay safe on the road, and obviously helping other folks stay safe as well. The other thing that you can do is you can contact the American Occupational Therapy Association. Their website has a listing of what are now being called driver rehabilitation specialists. And these are folks that have certain devices. They get in the car, they usually sit in the back seat actually, and your loved one drives and they do an assessment on their driving. So it is a kind of driving test, but it's not through the DMV. It's through somebody who was really looking for the key signs of aging and how that's impacting their driving ability. And you can also have your loved one's doctor prescribe to have a driver rehabilitation specialist test. So those are two options for you as your first step in, okay, let's just do an assessment. Let's make sure. The Harvard Health Letter came out with a report that said after the age of 40, we actually lose a half of an inch every decade. So ultimately, we're decreasing in size. So by the time we're in our golden years, we're about 3 inches shorter than where we were in our 30s and 40s. Also, the MIT Age Lab found that, because of arthritis and osteoporosis and other things, our flexibility and our reaction times are different from 10 or 20 years ago. And so we know that by the time you're 70, you've lost about 30% of your range of motion. And this is poor neck rotation to look, as you're changing lanes. And it can all double the risk of accidents. So I think all of these statistics and things are good to talk about, because what we have to realize is that driving is similar to our health. In the same way that we might have a health issue as we age and we have to go see our doctor, and the doctor says, well, this is what you have and this is what you need to do, driving is the same. You can't pretend that your driving skills at the age of 30 are the same at the age of 70. So, maybe have that conversation with your loved one where you agree to do an annual driver checkup. Just see how they're doing. Maybe some adjustments need to be made, some other things. There's also the driver rehabilitation specialists are important. I just want to note, you'll see on the screen there, AARP and Auto Club both have really great driver safety courses that you can look into, and I would check those out as well. And then there's a software program called DriveSharp. It comes from Posit Science, and I really like this. It's not a driver assessment or simulator. It's actually a suite of brain fitness exercises that has now been recommended by the Auto Club Foundation for Traffic Safety. And what it shows is that if you train for about 8 to 10 hours, you're going to process visual information faster. You actually have better peripheral vision of the roadway, and your reaction time improves. So they have national auto insurers now are recommending DriveSharp to senior drivers to cut their crash risk in half. And I think it's something that's interesting to check out. I think if you get it on your own, it's around maybe $200. You can find it online. But it's another way to help your loved one feel like they're taking steps to be safer on the road. So if you've gone through all of this and you're still realizing that, you know what, it's not improving, I'm very concerned about my loved one and others' safety, then you need to have that really, really difficult conversation about driving retirement. And the National Safety Council and Caring.com did a survey that showed that of all the conversations we have with our older parents, parents were 29% were willing to talk about funeral arrangements. 18% were willing to talk about actually selling their family home and moving into alternative living situation, and 36% were willing to talk about giving up the keys. So basically, it looks like, we'd rather talk about our own death or being homeless than we would about not driving anymore. So this is the biggest issue around senior independence, and it's the toughest, one of the toughest, if not the toughest conversation to have. So, going back to, so how do you have that conversation? As I said, think about this as an annual health checkup in the same way that your loved one has to go get a mammogram or a prostate exam or a colonoscopy as we age. Those are the annual tests we get to stay healthy. Well, maybe we need to put on that list an annual driving test, an annual checkup with an occupational therapist to see how our driving skills are. And if the driving skills are tough, then there's great resources out there. The Hartford has a lot of really great information under their Advanced 50 section of their website. And one thing I really love is a list of questions to ask your loved one called the Conversation Inventory, and it's specific to senior driving. So it's a really great resource to use. The other great resources are the Alzheimer's Association has developed these really, really wonderful videos that you can find on their website at alz.org. And these really take you through different scenarios. Now, of course, a lot of them are very focused on dementia folks, but I think they're actually helpful for any kind of caregiving with an older parent. And one of the things I really like in one of the videos they have is the family sits down with mom and they all agree that mom will sign a contract saying every year I will get a driver assessment, and if it's found that my skills are not up to snuff, then we'll talk about alternative transportation. And I think that's a great way to head it off at the pass, not deal with it in a crisis. It may be years before you have to look to that alternative transportation, but mom's agreed that she will be part of that. Now, if you want, an ARP is another great resource, by the way. Their Caregiver Resource Center has a lot of great information on senior driving. If you find that you do need to look at alternative transportation, I do advise caregivers scope that out before you have the conversation. You don't want to go into a conversation telling a loved one, I'm going to take something away, without giving them hope that they can stay mobile, that they can stay somewhat independent, and that you're going to still help them get around. And one of the things to think about is the National Association of Mobility Equipment Dealers Association. They have great resources for how to retrofit your car. So if one of your parents is still driving, but the other one needs more help, maybe it's a wheelchair or assistive devices, they can help, help you change your car and make it more accessible for a loved one who still needs to get around. There's also something I found that I thought was kind of interesting, which is called the Driver's Seat app. You can find it in the iTunes and other downloadable app libraries, but it's by Liberty Mutual. It's actually a senior driving simulator. And I took it, and I will tell you, it really gives you a sense of what happens to your driving abilities as you age. And I think it's a great thing for caregivers to check out, because we have to be empathetic. I mean, who wants to give up the keys to their car? So realizing what your loved one is going through, I think, will help you be more sensitive when you do need to have that conversation. So if you are looking for alternative transportation, there's a couple of things to think about. One is a study by the National Alliance for Caregiving showed that 83% of caregivers are providing transportation help to their loved one. So this is on the next page. And the AARP came out with a report that said caregivers provide 1.4 billion trips a year for loved ones who can no longer drive. So basically, if you're a caregiver for an older loved one who can't drive anymore, you're looking at becoming taxi driver. And there are some issues with that with regards to your own time and your own ability to get everything done. So I want to take you through what are your alternative transportation options and resources. First of all, a couple things to note about transportation. There are different types of services to be aware of. So curb to curb is what we traditionally think about in terms of if you actually do call yellow cab. They're only going to come up to the curb. They may honk for you. You have to come out, get into the taxi without help, and be on your way. For a lot of older Americans, that isn't going to cut it. So there's something to think about in terms of called door-to-door or door-through-door services. And what this means is that the drivers and the transportation companies actually go a little bit above and beyond. They will actually come to the front door. They'll help your loved one if they need, help taking an arm to get down the steps or over the lip of the door frame there. A lot of taxi and general transportation will not take people with wheelchairs because of the liability. So a lot of these other alternative transportation services will do that because they are trained and they understand what is needed with older Americans. So it's really important to look for those. And I've listed some of the companies that I feel do a really good job. So a couple of notes. Silveride is a wonderful service in the San Francisco area. Now they're expanding to other cities, but they actually provide companionship along with the ride. So if your loved one, it's not just a doctor visit, if your loved one wants to go to the opera, they actually will find an opera buff as a driver and accompany your loved one to the opera. So this helps both with not just getting to the opera or getting around, but it helps with the isolation that so often comes with older loved ones, particularly who are living alone. ITN America is great. They're in at least 20 different cities across the country. When you go to their website, you can check out those cities. They have a combination of both paid staff and volunteer staff. A resource for you is the National Center for Senior Transportation. This is actually a website that was created by Easter Seals and the American Administration on Aging, and it falls under the National Family Caregiver Support Program, but a lot of the Department of Transportation resources state by state are listed there, as well as other things. Some of the home services, home care services, personal care like Home Instead and Right at Home, they will actually provide some transportation for your loved one. If it's just to go to and from a doctor appointment or maybe to go to the pharmacy to pick up a medication, they can provide and will provide that, but they don't provide the more the larger things like going to the opera, for instance, or doing more of the lifestyle type events. So you have to check that out. But do know that that is part of a service that they provide. Obviously, a lot of the faith-based groups, churches are wonderful resources for helping you to help get your loved one around and get them to and from, church and other events that are so important for them. The Center for Volunteer Caregiving, which was formerly known as Faith in Action, is a great one to look up. And then obviously lots of helping hands. I know that transportation help is one of the big things that a lot of caregivers in your communities look for. And a lot of volunteers are signing up to help with that. So those are some great alternative transportation ideas for you. So our second big issue with caregivers is really, this whole thought about in-home care. And one of the things that's really kind of emerging as this new area is what I call the matchmakers. And I say that because I've interviewed now several of these companies, and they truly work almost like a Match.com or an online dating service, because you have to fill out a profile for what you're looking for. Then they match you up with who they think, works best in terms of your budget and your area of service and what your needs are. You get to video chat and do an interview with these in-home care service folks. Or you can also schedule an in-person interview. So for me, it sounds very much like a matchmaking service. So that's what I'm basically officially calling them. And I wanted to kind of take you through some things to think about with these services. First of all, there's a couple of different ways that they work, and you just should be aware of this. I'm not really advocating for one way or another, but there's two ways that they operate from a monetization standpoint, and that is that you either pay for the service, so you might sign up and have a subscription, and you pay a monthly service to help find a variety of different in-home care and other care needs, or you can access it for free And just know that any of the listings that you're provided with, those providers have actually paid to be listed. So it's almost kind of like a yellow pages, if you will, where they've paid to be listed as one of the resources that you can find. So those are just a couple things to note. And some of the names of services that are cropping up online are places like Care Scout, which is now a division of Genworth Financial. Care Scout has a wonderful service online for caregivers where they have a database of over 90,000 both in-home care, assisted living, and specialized nursing care facilities. And it's all very local. You put in your zip code and you can access that database. Now, to go and get some additional information from them, like ratings of these services and photos and other things, there is a subscription fee for that. CareLinks is another one that has really addressed the needs of folks who really have to keep their costs down. I just did an interview with their CEO who was telling me about a woman in Phoenix whose father was being discharged from the hospital very fast, because that's what happens these days. You're in and out of those hospital stays. And she needed to find in-home care for her father in Los Angeles, and she couldn't take off work to come down from Phoenix to do that. So she went on to CareLinks, and she was able to find a great personal care aid that she needed. And over the long run, she was estimating that she was going to save about $10,000 over the course of 1 year, because she wasn't going through some other agencies which are going to charge more and some different things. So that's something to think about. Care.com is another great resource. They actually offer, particularly if you're working, they offer backup care services. So you can get backup care as a caregiver. They also go above and beyond because they'll also offer respite care. They do special needs children, folks that can come into the home and help with your special needs child, whether they have ADD or autism or Down syndrome. And they do even pet care. So they are pretty robust. And then A Place for Mom is really very focused on different senior living facilities. And again, they have a very large database, and you can search the database. And then they also have online or telephonic help that you can ask questions of a senior advisor to get some more input on the choices. What you need to think about when you're thinking about both these online matchmaking services, but also the in-home care that you can find through a Home Instead or a Right at Home or some others, is that you need to create, a profile. Basically, you need to think through with your loved one, what are you really looking for? What are the needs specifically? And what are the do's and don'ts? What do you want and what do you don't want in someone that you want to come into the home to take care of your loved one? So you need to create that job description. Obviously, these agencies will do background checks for you, which are really, really critical. And I'm going to get into a different segment of in-home care to be careful about that don't do background checks, but all of these agencies will do that for you. You can also then check references, and I also encourage caregivers, check out the Facebook page. I mean, you want to know about this person on every level, not just their professional ratings or references, but if they have a Facebook page, you might find some very interesting things about that person that you didn't know, and I think it's always good information. And then again, you want to definitely conduct either a video chat or an in-person interview first and make sure you feel very comfortable with this person. Um, so those are the matchmaking services. Now, there's something that we talk about a lot when it comes to home care and home living options, and I call it the Goldilocks Syndrome. It's something you definitely want to avoid. And let me tell you a quick story. In my book, I interviewed Joan London, who, as most of you know, was the talk show host on Good Morning America for years and years and years. And she is a caregiver to her mother who has dementia. Now, Joan lives in Connecticut, and her mother lives out here in California. And what she found is at first she kept her mom at home and had some in-home care, and then realized that was probably not going to be enough. Her mom really needed to be in a facility where she could be watched over, 24/7. So then she looked up and found some wonderful assisted living facilities in the area in California, and she found a beautiful facility, gorgeous dining room, clean, bright, lots of people around, beautiful apartment living for her mom, and thought, this is it. This is just wonderful, wonderful place. Moved her mom in, and her mom was absolutely miserable for a lot of reasons. But one reason was because her mom had sundowners. She was sundowning. And so when she would come down to the dining room for dinner, she was paranoid, she was fearful, she was scared. So she actually stopped eating. And this was a huge, huge issue for Joan that the facility administrators finally called her about. So finally, she wound up taking her mom at the suggestion of an elder law attorney to a facility that was a residential facility. It was basically a home. There were 6 residents. They all had dementia, so it was a very specialized care unit for memory care. And her mother is still there today and thriving. And the reason why is because it feels like her old home. It reminds her of those things that she had when she still, the memories that she can reach back to. She likes the fact it's very intimate and it's small. She can sit in a living room and watch TV and not be in a big, huge room with, 30 other people. And what Joan told me she learned is she said, you're right. I called it the Goldilocks Syndrome. And she said, you're right. We had to try all these different things to get to the right place when I should have taken my mom there first and realized that the woman I was finding a facility for, I was looking for a facility that would have fit her 30 years ago before the dementia was here. I had to really think about what she was facing. And I think this is a great, great example of what caregivers need to think about. We often look for a facility that we would like to live in, but we need to really think, what are the needs of our loved one? We shouldn't look at beautiful dining rooms. We should ask, what's the ratio of patients to staff? Is there a therapy pool on site? What are the types of protocols and things that you have in place to help folks with dementia? Those are the questions you really want to ask when you're looking at these different kinds of facilities and avoiding those Goldilocks syndrome. But before we get there, there's really 3 options that you're going to face with your loved one. Either keeping them at home, which is what 80% of all Americans want to do. We want to age in place, is what it's called, and stay in our homes as long and as independently as possible. Or moving them into your home, which is your second option. And then your third option, of course, is going to be looking for those alternative living, because the first 2 options just really aren't practical for you. So on the next slide, I talk about the 2 options for home care. And, there's a lot of questions that I think you need to ask, because both options will work, but it just really depends on the situation and the family. Home Instead, which is an international organization that provides in-home care services, has a really wonderful list of questions. And it's got things on it like, are you going to have to modify your home or your loved one's home to keep them safe? To make it a home for a lifetime? What's your affordability? Can you afford to keep your loved one in their home or move them into your home? How is it going to impact your family if they move into your home? If your loved one is living alone, do you have to be concerned about that? They'll be isolated. Do they have enough social activity going on that you can help them with, or get them to keep them active and keep them happy? And how much real care and assistance is needed? So these are a lot of questions that need to be asked. A couple of things to think about. Rebuilding Together is a national organization made up of volunteers. Quite a few of these folks are actually people who work in the home building industry or work at things like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, and they want to volunteer their expertise and time. And they can come in and they can help do some small things in your loved one's home. So for instance, they can replace the flimsy towel bars that we all have in our bathrooms and put in some really heavy duty, nice looking grab bars, which are very essential and actually good for all of us. It doesn't matter what your age is. We shouldn't rely on those flimsy towel bars. They can also do things like, help with steps and make them slopes. Move some cabinets around and things like that. But usually it's pretty small, volunteer work, and they do it for both older seniors but also veterans. And they usually do it on a basis where there's a financial need, where you can't have an expert or a contractor come in. Now, when you do have the means to turn to someone who is an expert, there's something called a certified aging in place specialist These are specific experts who have gone through critical training on specifically the home environment and how to make it safe. And in my book, there's a wonderful section that I call the Universal Design Home Tour, that I had the one of the most noted CAPS experts in the country, Louis Tenenbaum. He took me through room by room and told me all the things that need to be thought about and changed to make sure that our loved ones or even ourselves can live in our homes as long as possible. There's another option to keeping your loved one in their home called the village movement, and this is actually a really great situation where a lot of communities are coming together, particularly where there might be several older folks in the same area or even on the same street, and they're forming a nonprofit organization where they decide, okay, we're going to pay an annual fee or a monthly fee, and that will give us access to a coordination service that's almost like a concierge, and that concierge will do everything we need. If our loved one isn't as mobile, they'll run to the grocery store, they'll run to the pharmacy and get their medications. If they need improvements in their home, then they'll find the folks that can help do that. They also do social activities like Tai Chi classes, or going to church. They'll gather everybody. So it's a really interesting movement that there's about, I think, about 89 or so of these villages that have cropped up across the country. And the first one was in Beacon Hill. So anyway, that is where it started in Massachusetts, near the Boston area there, and it's now grown across the country. And then the Visiting Nurses Association of America is another great resource in terms of just questions to ask and things to do. From moving the perspective of moving your loved one into your home, again, you need to think about home design. Some things will need to change depending on your loved one's needs. I also tell caregivers, think about the upstairs, downstairs. As we get older, stairs become tougher and tougher to navigate. So it's probably the most practical thing to have your loved one in the downstairs bedroom if you have one. So you need to think about that. There's also something called granny pods. And I don't know if I like that name so much, but it's kind of an interesting thing that's been cropping up. And these are things like Med Cottage and some other names and things we have listed in the resources. But you can retrofit your garage into an apartment, or you can even have these modular installation designs, and they can be put up in your backyard so that your loved one can literally live somewhat independently, but they're right there near you. And those are other options if you don't have the space within your home that you can think about in order to care for your loved one, and have them live close or near you or right there in your backyard. And then there's also things to think about as a caregiver. You need to get a break, even if they're living in your home. You're going to be caring for them, obviously, just about 24/7, but you need to get that break. So adult daycare services are wonderful. There are places where you can take your loved one, they get socialization, and you get a break, or you get to go to work, or whatever it is. There's also the Arch National Lifespan Respite is offers the ABCs of respite care, and that's a great way to find out how you can get some respite care and get a break. And then just know that when it comes to in-home care, there are some different designations. And obviously you can talk to your loved one's doctor about this, but a home health aide is someone who can actually check pulses, check temperatures, and help with medications. A personal care assistant is really going to be more focused on things like helping do the dishes, or helping prepare meals, or do a little light housekeeping, or help your loved one get in and out of the car, and go maybe to a doctor's appointment, those types of things. They're not doing as much of the kind of quasi nursing care. And then a full nurse is a licensed registered nurse, and those are the folks that can come in and really help change catheters and bandages and help with pressure sores and other things that your loved one might be facing. So on the next slide, the in-home care, I have a thumbs up and a thumbs down. This is strictly my input and my assessment, if you will, I guess. I say thumbs up on things like, first of all, the Elder Care Locator is a wonderful resource. It's operated through the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging, of which most of these local agencies are located in most of the counties across the country. So it's on a county level. You can go on to the Elder Care Locator and find the resources that you need for a variety of different services for older loved ones in your community, which is where you really need the help, or in your loved one's community. So it's a great resource. But as I said, there's also, Home Instead is a wonderful organization. They've been around a long time. They're internationally based, very well versed in all of the personal care needs of your loved one. Live Home is another one. Right at Home, Senior Helpers, you see them. Gray market services are something I wanted to bring up. I do a thumbs down on gray market services, and here's why. What that talks about are, there are a lot of folks now who are looking for work and they're listing themselves on Craigslist, or it's by word of mouth, in the same way you might have a housekeeper and she's got a cousin who's looking for work. It's a word of mouth kind of situation, or even a local newspaper classified ads. A lot of folks are turning to these resources because they can be very cost effective. And I'm not saying that it isn't a choice, but I'm saying be very, very cautious about this, because this is where you can get into issues where there's no background checks unless you do it. There's no criminal checks unless you do it. A lot of these services are not going to be covered by Medicare or Medicaid, reimbursement. So it's just, I just would be very careful. And let me give you a quick story. This actually appeared in the Los Angeles Times. A woman hired someone that she had found as a health care worker for her mom through Craigslist. And she was working, so she couldn't be home with her mom. Well, her neighbor told her that she noticed that this healthcare worker very clumsily threw her mom into a car and then parked a couple blocks away and left her mom in the car for 2 hours on a very hot day. So this caregiver said, wow, I need to check this out. So she took the day off work the next day, and sure enough, the same thing happened. She followed this home health care worker, watched that she left the mom in the car and went into this house. So the caregiver went up to the house and knocked on the door, and there's this woman with her boyfriend, and she was having these afternoon trysts with her boyfriend while her mother was in a hot car, becoming dehydrated with no water or anything. And those are the cautionary tales, I think, that we need to be careful about when you don't have someone who's maybe fully credentialed or fully background checked. It's just, this is your most precious thing, your loved one. You want to make sure that you're doing the best you can in the care that you're providing. On the next slide, really quickly, because I know we're getting out of close to our end here, I just wanted to take you through, if you have to look for alternative living, and your loved one cannot live with you, they can't stay in their home anymore for a variety of different reasons. And by the way, do not feel guilty about any of that, because there are so many choices out there now to care for our loved ones, and they're wonderful choices. It's not just the quote-unquote dreaded nursing home scenario. So there's no guilt. It's really what is going to be the best care for your loved one. And you've got really kind of three categories to think about. One is assisted living, which is where your loved one needs maybe a little assistance, but they're still somewhat mobile. Now, one of the myths about assisted living is that you can't live there if you're in a wheelchair, which is actually not necessarily true. Now, again, it really depends on the facility and depends on the county and state you live in. But if your loved one is able to transfer from bed to wheelchair to bath with just one other person helping them, there are a lot of assisted living facilities that will take you. Same thing with incontinence. It used to be if you were incontinent, you couldn't live in assisted living facilities, but if you can manage your incontinence with scheduling and maybe even medications, then assisted living is still an option. So don't think that you can't look to those and you have to just immediately go to the nursing home with your loved one. Also know that there are so many different options in assisted living. The Greenhouse Project is really interesting. It's operating right now in 32 states. There's 134 of these greenhouses with 250 more in development. And what it is it's basically a home, and it's very similar to the residential home setup. but it's done in a way where it's all customized by the folks that are living there. So you can make your room the way you want. You have a communal section where there's kind of a living room and a dining room area. And then there are certified nurse assistants who are on calls 24/7 and come in and help with the folks in those homes. Special care units are memory care units, particularly for dementia patients. That's the Joan London story I was telling you about. Regionally, there's an organization out here called Silverado Senior Living, which does wonderful memory care assisted living. And then there's board and care. So if you have a child with special needs and for whatever reason they need to live in an adult family home, you can look to board and care facilities and residential care homes. The continuing care retirement communities are the most expensive, and the reason why is because they've got a variety of different living options through the care continuum on one campus. So you might start out in more of a senior living or assisted living situation, then you have to move into a specialized nursing facility, and that's all on the same campus. And you buy into these communities up front, and then they basically take care of you through all the transitions of care you might need, and that's why they are more expensive. The good news about CCRCs is that it does allow a couple who are aging but might be at different phases to still live together. So you can have your dad in assisted living and maybe your mom's in the the nursing home, but they're still right there where he can just walk over and see her every day, and that's what a lot of folks do like. And then there are the specialized or the skilled nursing facilities, and that's either if you're coming out of rehabilitation from a hospitalization, you have limited mobility, or you need that specialized medical or nursing care. It's the highest level of really healthcare, medical care you can get. The Eden alternative is something that was started to really infuse nursing homes with a greater sense of just plants and people, and you'll find a lot of grandchildren that come and visit, and there's just a whole concept around this, and that has been adopted now by a lot of different nursing homes across the country. And the resources are Help Guide, Leading Age, which is an organization of 6,000 different nonprofit organizations and services across the country, and Next Step in Care, which is really great stuff about care transitions, taking a loved one from hospital to home to facility. These are all great resources. They have questions to ask, they have checklists. So I'm giving those to you as something to check out. The next page, really quickly, never be embarrassed to ask about ratings of the different facilities. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, rates nursing homes. They just came out with their latest rating in July. Caring.com, Snap for Seniors, and CareScout will all offer ratings of a different variety. CareScout actually gives you their professional rating of the facilities, but then they also offer the actual user ratings, and that is what Caring.com and Snap for Seniors does as well. So those are always great things to look for. And just a quick note about disaster preparation and emergency plans. There was a report that came out earlier this year from the Office of Inspector General for the Department of Health and Human Services. After Katrina, they wanted to make sure that nursing facilities knew emergency care plans for the patients. And the report actually said, yes, we have about, I think, 70 or 80% of the facilities are adhering to all of the standards that have been set. However, they did a random check of 24 facilities. They did in-person checks and found that they all failed to have enough water supply, to know the emergency protocols. So I always caution caregivers, if you have a loved one in a facility, ask about their ratings, ask about any fines that they've received, and make sure that the emergency plans are well in place and that you know about them. And then lastly, your secret weapon in all of this, whether it's senior driving, in-home care, different alternative living situations, is a geriatric care manager. And in honor of the 50th anniversary of James Bond, and I know the new Skyfall movie is coming out in a couple weeks, if for those of you who are fans of the Bond series, I have my great image there of Judi Dench, who is my favorite M. And if you remember from these movies, M is really the person who guides Bond. You know, she's the one who sets up the missions. She keeps him safe as much as possible. She gives him input, gives him intelligence, and basically is kind of the overseer of this, and coaches Bond on how to stay out of so many of the different scrapes that he does get into. And your M in this world of caring for a loved one is a geriatric care manager, and you can find them through the National Association of Professional Geriatric Care Managers. They're in every county across the country. They really become your coach. They can counsel families when there's a lot of conflict. They can help you find the right resources in your community or your loved one's community. They can help give you that peace of mind that is so, so essential. And, you know, lots of helping hands is your other secret weapon in all of this. The resources that they list under either the companies that care or in their resources tab. And that's a lot of information that you guys give to Lotsa when you've used a service and you rate it and you think it's great. That's another great way to just keep caregivers in the know and make sure that they are making the best choices they can for their loved ones. And so I'll leave you with my mantra, which is always to balance self-care while caregiving. I think knowledge is power. Hopefully we gave you a lot of great resources and knowledge today so that you feel like you know what you might be in for, or you know where to turn, and that's going to help you, give you peace of mind, and maybe also give you a little time back so you can take care of yourself, which is always something that I look for. And then on the next few pages, I listed all of the resources I mentioned because I know we went through them very, very quickly. So feel free to, you know, look at those when this gets posted online. And then lastly, as we mentioned, my book is called A Cast of Caregivers. I have all of this information and tips and advice and expert interviews and on all the things we talked about today and more, as well as 7 celebrities that I interviewed about their caregiving journey, all very different journeys, by the way, of caring for loved ones. And it really, I feel like it's pretty comprehensive. It's kind of the what to expect when you're caregiving guide, and it comes out in February. I think you can pre-order it in late November, later this month, and I encourage you to pick it up and hopefully it will help you. So thank you again for listening today. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much, Sherri. That was a really comprehensive, wow, you packed a lot in that 45 minutes. And I know our listeners are very grateful. And as you shared with me in planning this particular topic, what I love about what you did is it's kind of just having a conversation with your friends and talking about those resources. And increasingly, we need to be doing that with one another. We need to be having the candid conversation and sharing information and what works and what doesn't. So may this be the beginning of many more types of educational programming we can do for our members. So thank you so much.
Great,
And
thank you.
this is how you can, excuse me, reach Sherri if you would like to check out more of her resources. Certainly, she's a very active Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube presence. So I encourage you to jot these links down, and we certainly have them on our website as well. As Sherri mentioned, we have a growing list of companies that care at Lots Helping Hands. So we encourage you to tell us about resources that are working for you in your caregiving journey. We have a resource directory as well where we highlight them. So we are always looking to build that out and certainly welcome your input and your thoughts. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time for Q&A today, but we are always here. So you can reach us by in a lot of different ways. Certainly, if you go to our website, you can connect with us there. Check out our campaign, as I mentioned at the beginning of the hour, called the Year of Helping Hands, and consider making a promise for yourself to help a caregiver in the next year. And as I said, we'll be sharing more tips about this as we go forward. Here's an example of our promise page, and I hope you all are able to check it out. You can also connect with Lotsa via Facebook, Twitter, on LinkedIn and Pinterest, and probably most importantly, our member support center. If you are in a community right now or you're looking to get started and you have some questions, you can email us 24/7 at support@lotsahelpinghands.com. And so we just want to wrap things up and conclude now. And again, I just want to share our thanks on behalf of everyone at Lots Helping Hands. Thanks to Sherri Snelling for sharing her wisdom with us today. And thanks to each of you who were able to participate in this very special webinar as we kick off National Family Caregivers Month this November. And we will be back in touch with you when the recording is available, as well as when we have new topics to share for December and January as we continue to provide this program for the caregivers in the Lotsa family and beyond. So thanks for your participation, and we'll be back in touch soon. Take care.